Residents were told the water is safe. 3 class action lawsuits later, the town still hasn't refunded one bill. Not one. 8 years of litigation, 8 years of boil notices, 8 years of lawyers billing $4.80 an hour to argue whether the lead pipes counted as a renovation or an accident. And during those 8 years, the monthly water bill kept arriving. On time, polite, itemized, with a little late fee warning at the bottom in red ink. You paid it because if you didn't, they'd put a lien on your house. The same house you bought because the brochure said safe community, great schools, clean water. 2 out of 3 was a lie, and the third one depended on whether the school bus driver remembered to show up. This is the part of America the tourism board does not print on the postcard. America has a marketing department. It's called the real estate industry. And the real estate industry has spent 60 years selling you a picture. The porch, the flag, the dog, the lawnmower, the neighbor who waves. What they don't sell you is the binder. The binder is 400 pages. The binder is the Homeowners Association bylaws, the deed restrictions, the road maintenance agreement, the water district contract, the special assessments clause, and the page 37 paragraph 11 that says the board may modify these terms at any time without notice. You don't read the binder. Nobody reads the binder. The binder reads you. I'm Report State. I don't cover real estate. I cover what the real estate industry covers up. And for the next 40 minutes, we are walking through 10 small American towns where the brochure and the binder are 2 different documents written in 2 different languages for 2 very different audiences. The brochure is for your heart. The binder is for your bank account. And the binder always wins. Here's what's coming. We have a town where the drinking water has been in class action court for 8 years and still hasn't been fixed. We have a town where every single road, every driveway, every sidewalk, every cul-de-sac is private, and if the private owner decides not to plow after a snowstorm, you can't leave your house until April. We have a town of 140,000 retirees where 3 separate class actions are sitting on a judge's desk right now, and the homeowner's dues run $2,400 a month. And at number 1, and I want you to hang on for this, a town where you legally cannot sell your home without the board's approval, because the board owns the right to veto your buyer. You own the house, they own the permission to leave. Before we start, a small request. Hit subscribe. Not because the algorithm thinks you left, because the next time your cousin calls you at 9 p.m., excited about a new development he just put a deposit on, you're going to want to know what to ask him before he signs. This channel is that checklist. You don't get a refund on the signature, you get a lawsuit. Let's break it down. Number 10. Number 10, Sun City, Arizona, the age-gated cage. This is where we start, because Sun City is the original, the first master-planned retirement community in America, built in 1960 by a developer named Del Webb, who figured out that if you sold houses only to people over 55, you could also sell them a lifestyle. And a lifestyle is the most expensive product ever invented because it never actually arrives. Sun City, Arizona, population around 38,000, median home price around $320,000. Monthly HOA fees, and this is the part they don't put on the sign, range from $500 to $1,400, depending on which phase you bought into. Crime rate is low if you define crime as breaking and entering. If you define crime as the Recreation Center's board voting to raise your dues 40% in one meeting to cover a pool renovation nobody asked for, then the crime rate is statistically 100% of households affected per year. Here's what nobody tells you. Sun City is not a city. It is an unincorporated community, which is a phrase that sounds like it means free, but actually means you have no mayor, you have no city council, you have no elected government with the power to tax or zone or regulate. You have a homeowners association, The Homeowners Association is technically a private non-profit corporation. The non-profit corporation can do almost anything an elected government can do, except you can't vote anyone out of it without a court order. The board members are elected by homeowners who show up. And homeowners in Sun City have an average age of 74, which means the board is often made up of the loudest, most persistent, most legally aggressive residents in the community, which, in any democracy, is a recipe for rule by the people who have the most time and the most grievances. The history here is wild. In the 80s, the Sun City Board tried to ban children from the community. A grandmother had her 8-year-old grandson visiting for the summer. The board sent her a cease and desist. She sued. It went to court. The court ruled that a private community could, in fact, enforce age restrictions on permanent residents but could not ban temporary visitors. The grandmother won. The board appealed. The board lost. The board spent, by local reporting, about $212,000 in legal fees fighting an 8-year-old. That money came from monthly HOA dues, which means every resident in Sun City paid, on average, about $5.60 to fund the legal war against a child who wanted to visit his grandma for the summer. The grandson is now in his 40s. He does not live in Sun City. A long-time resident put it this way on a public forum: "I moved here for the quiet. I got the quiet. But the quiet is also the sound of nobody under 60 laughing. I forgot what it sounds like. I miss it." The comedy rant writes itself. You retire to Sun City, and day one you sign a document that says your grandchildren cannot live with you. Your dog cannot exceed 25 pounds. Your fence cannot exceed 4 feet. Your mailbox must match the community-approved color of eggshell beige, and the board reserves the right to inspect your property at any reasonable hour. You are free. You are also, in the most literal sense, subject to the most detailed private government ever engineered in the Western Hemisphere. Freedom, brought to you by 76 pages of bylaws. Picture this: it is 6:30 in the morning, Sun City, Arizona, first week of June. The sun is already 102 degrees. You walk outside to get your paper. 3 houses down, a neighbor is painting his trim. The board violation notice is already in the mail, and it will arrive on Thursday. He's painting his trim the wrong shade of white. Beneath the approved beige is a slightly different beige, and to the human eye they are identical. But a board member with a color sample book has already driven past in a golf cart and logged the complaint. Your neighbor doesn't know yet. On Thursday, he'll open the envelope and discover he owes a $50 fine and must repaint within 30 days. He'll be furious. He'll call the board. The board will say, "Sir, the bylaws are the bylaws." He'll go to the meeting. He'll give a speech. Nothing will change. This is the retirement you bought. That's the take. Sun City is not a trap because it's bad. It's a trap because you gave away your vote the day you signed the deed, and the people who run your life now are strangers in golf carts with paint chips. If you think Sun City is strict, wait until you see what happens when a community is designed not by a developer, but by a branding agency. Number 9. Lakewood Ranch, Florida. The master-planned mirage. Population around 66,000 and climbing fast. Median home price around $640,000, because this is Florida, and Florida is in the middle of a real estate delusion that refuses to end. HOA, fees between $300 and $900 a month, depending on which village inside the ranch you bought into. Because Lakewood Ranch is not one community, it's a federation of sub-communities, each with its own board, its own dues, its own rules, and its own ongoing legal disputes. Cost of living is about 12% above the national average. Crime rate is low. Property tax is moderate. On paper, it looks like a dream. Here's the twist. Lakewood Ranch is technically a Community Development District, or CDD. which is a special Florida legal invention that allows a developer to issue bonds to pay for the roads, the sewers, the clubhouses, the fountains, and then pass the bond repayment onto the homeowners as a separate annual assessment, on top of the HOA fees, on top of the property taxes. So when you buy a house in Lakewood Ranch for $640,000, you are not just buying a house. You are buying your share of the debt the developer took out to build the roads you now drive on. A typical CDD assessment in Lakewood Ranch runs between $1,800 and $4,200 a year. Per house mortgage just to live in my own house. I asked the realtor why she didn't mention the CDD. She said, "It's in the disclosure." I said, "It's on page 240 of the disclosure." She said, "Yes." Let me rant for a second. In Florida, the CDD system is not hidden. It's technically public. The assessments are recorded. The bond amounts are published. The developer does not lie. The developer also does not stand on your lawn with a bullhorn announcing, "Hey, by the way, you are inheriting 4 decades of infrastructure debt." The system is designed to be legally transparent and practically invisible. And that gap between what is technically disclosed and what is actually explained is where the real estate industry lives. That gap pays for boats. Picture this. It is October. You have just closed on a house in Lakewood Ranch. The movers are leaving. The neighbors have left a welcome basket on the porch, a bottle of wine, a brochure for the country club, and a pamphlet about the upcoming CDD board election. You open the pamphlet. You learn for the first time that there is a board you have never heard of which controls a budget you are financing, which can raise your assessment at its own discretion, and which meets on Tuesday mornings at 10 a.m. at the community center. You will not attend Tuesday morning meetings. You have a job. The board knows you have a job. The board's average attendee is retired. The retirees decide what your assessment is. You pay it. That's the model. Lakewood Ranch is paradise for the people who show up. For everyone else, it's a subscription service with a lawn. If you think a community development district sounds bureaucratic, the next town on this list was literally designed by a cartoon studio, and the lawsuits are exactly as ridiculous as that sounds. Number 8. Celebration, Florida. The Disney town that sued its own residents. I'm not making this up. Celebration was built in 1996 by the Walt Disney Company as an experiment. What if we designed a real town the way we design a theme park? Pastel houses, white picket fences, a fake snow machine for the Christmas parade, a main street with a bakery, and a master plan so tightly controlled that the exterior paint colors were chosen from a palette of 6 approved shades. Disney sold the houses. Disney set up the HOA. Disney ran the town. And then, in 2004, Disney quietly sold off its control. Not the land, not the houses, but the governance structure to a private equity firm. The residents found out by press release. Population around 7,400. Median home price around $750,000. HOA fees around $300 a month, which sounds reasonable until you learn that the fees were raised 38% in a single assessment in 2016 to cover the cost of repairs to the town's shared infrastructure. Infrastructure that, because the town is not incorporated, cannot be paid for by public funds. The residents sued. The residents lost. Then the residents sued again over mold. The buildings, because they were designed for aesthetic consistency rather than Florida's actual climate, had been constructed with materials that trap moisture. Mold bloomed, lawsuits filed, settlements reached, dues raised, settlements paid for, in part, with the dues. Here's what nobody tells you. When Disney owned Celebration, you could complain to Disney. Disney had a brand to protect. Disney would fix things. When Disney sold Celebration to a private equity firm, the firm had no brand. The firm had a balance sheet. The balance sheet said, "Legal settlements are a line item, and a line item can be budgeted, and a budget can be charged to the residents. The residents who moved to Celebration because they loved Disney were suddenly living in a town governed by a spreadsheet. A resident in a local documentary said this: "We moved here for the magic. We stayed because we couldn't afford to leave." The market for Celebration homes collapsed after the mold suit. Everyone wanted out. Nobody could sell. You were trapped in the magic, the comedy. You bought a pastel house in a Disney-designed town, and the board of directors is a hedge fund in Connecticut. You walk down Main Street, past the bakery and the pharmacy and the hair salon, all of which look like a movie set because they are a movie set, and the homeowner behind you is on the phone with her lawyer about a special assessment to replace the drywall in her master bedroom, which grew a black mold colony the size of a dinner plate, which she photographed, which she sent to the board, which responded with a form letter signed by someone named Kevin. You live in a simulation. The simulation bills you. Picture this. It's the 4th of July in Celebration. The Disney-style parade rolls down Main Street. A high school marching band plays. A fire truck throws candy. The crowd cheers. In the third-floor condo above the bakery, a retired accountant named Linda is on her laptop, drafting her third legal complaint of the year. She is watching the parade through her window. Below her, a little girl waves an American flag. Linda types, "The board continues to deny liability for documented water intrusion in Unit 304. Linda hits send. The marching band reaches the chorus of "God Bless America." Linda closes her laptop. The simulation continues. That's the take. Celebration is a town built on the idea that you can buy happiness, and the proof that you can't is in the public court filings, 16 of them and counting. If a Disney town can go from magic to mold, the next one was built by a Catholic billionaire who wanted to design a town where the government, the church, and the pharmacy all had the same phone number. Number 7. Ave Maria, Florida. The town where your vote doesn't count. Population around 3,400. Median home price around $380,000. HOA fees around $240 a month. Founded in 2005 by Tom Monahan, the founder of Domino's Pizza, who after selling the pizza company used his fortune to build a Catholic university and a purpose-built Catholic town to surround it. Ave Maria was designed around a cathedral. The streets are named after Catholic saints. The pharmacy, this is the famous part, originally refused to sell contraceptives on religious grounds. There was a lawsuit. The pharmacy was eventually compelled to stock them. The lawsuit cost $150,000 to litigate. The lawsuit did not fix the underlying issue, which is this: Ave Maria is a stewardship community district. A stewardship district is a specific Florida legal structure in which the developer retains weighted voting power for a fixed number of years, or until a specific build-out threshold is met. In Ave Maria, the developer, Barron Collier Companies, and the Monahan Trust retains the majority of votes on the community board. By design, for decades. Here's what that means in practice. You buy a house in Ave Maria. You are a resident. You are a homeowner. You pay HOA fees. You vote in HOA elections. And your vote is worth, mathematically, a fraction of a developer's vote for as long as the stewardship agreement remains in force. In Ave Maria's case, that's until a specified build-out condition is met, which, at the current pace of construction, is estimated to be somewhere between the year 2040 and the year 2050. Congratulations, you are a resident with a home and no real vote until you are dead, or the developer decides otherwise. Here's the part that nobody tells you. The stewardship district has the power to issue bonds, levy assessments, control road maintenance, set water and sewer rates, and approve or deny commercial development within the town boundary. So when you wake up in Ave Maria, and the grocery store has raised prices, or the gas station has changed hours, or a new medical clinic has been rejected from building on Main Street, the decision was made by a board that you cannot meaningfully vote against. You can attend the meetings, you can speak during public comment, you can write letters, and then the weighted vote happens and the developer wins. Every time. By design. A resident wrote on a community forum, "I moved to Ave Maria because I wanted to live in a place with values. I got values. I also got a private government that treats me like a tenant in my own house. I can't even get a second gas station approved because the board doesn't want to dilute the existing franchise." Let me rant. In America, we have a cultural obsession with freedom. We wave flags, we shoot fireworks, we write op-eds about the Constitution. And then we voluntarily move into communities where we give up our voting rights in exchange for granite countertops and a clubhouse. We do this knowingly. We sign the documents. We pay the fees. We complain later. The developers know we'll do this. The developers have actuarial tables. The tables say, they'll sign, they'll complain, they'll stay, they'll die. Repeat. Picture this, Sunday morning in Ave Maria. The bells of the Ave Maria oratory ring across the central square. Families walk to Mass in their Sunday clothes. The grass is perfect. The hedges are trimmed to the quarter-inch. At a small metal table outside the bakery, a man in his late 60s is reading the community newsletter. The newsletter contains the agenda for the next Stewardship District meeting. Item 3 on the agenda, approval of a sewer rate increase of 11%. Effective January 1st. The man reads it twice. He puts down the newsletter. He picks up his coffee. He does nothing. He has read this kind of agenda for 14 years. He has attended the meetings. He has spoken during public comment. The rate increases pass. The rate increases always pass. He sips his coffee. The bells finish ringing. He goes to Mass. That's the take. Ave Maria is a town built on faith, and faith is exactly what you're required to have that the board will act in your interest. Because faith is all you have left after they took your vote. If a Catholic billionaire can build a town where your vote is weighted, the next one was built so poorly that the vote doesn't matter because there's only one road out and somebody owns it. Number 6. Poinciana, Florida. The subdivision that forgot to build an exit. Population around 62,000, spread across 9 villages, 2 counties, and one of the most badly engineered evacuation plans in Florida. Median home price around $310,000. HOA fees vary by village, ranging from $200 to $400 a month. Cost of living is roughly 5% below the Florida average, which is how Poinciana was marketed as affordable Florida paradise. What the marketing did not mention is that Poinciana was built in the 1970s by the General Development Corporation, a company that later collapsed under a federal fraud indictment for selling lots to buyers under false pretenses, promising roads, schools, and utilities that had not yet been built, and in many cases never were. Here's the twist that made Poinciana infamous. The development was platted across 2 counties, Polk and Osceola, with a road network designed by engineers who assumed a much smaller build-out than what eventually occurred. When Hurricane Irma approached in 2017, Poinciana's residents discovered that the subdivision had effectively 2 exit routes for 60,000 people. Evacuation traffic jammed for 12 hours. People ran out of gas on the shoulder. Elderly residents with medical equipment sat in cars as the storm bands moved in. One resident later testified that it took her 9 hours to travel what should have been a 20-minute drive. The County Emergency Management Office acknowledged the design flaw. The fix, widening the main arteries and adding a new exit corridor, was estimated to cost $140 million. The counties said the state should pay. The state said the counties should pay. 7 years later, the fix has not been funded. A resident posted on a storm preparation forum, "We moved to Poinciana because it was cheap. We're staying because we can't sell. Nobody wants to buy a house in a community where the evacuation plan is a prayer." The comedy here is the kind that isn't funny. Poinciana has pickleball courts. It has 3 clubhouses. It has a water park. What it does not have is a second functional exit for 62,000 human beings during a Category 3 hurricane. The priorities of mid-century Florida development summarized. Amenities are capital investments that return value through resale. Roads are cost centers that don't. So you get the amenities. You do not get the roads. Picture this. It's a Tuesday in September. A tropical system has just been upgraded to a hurricane in the Gulf. Your phone buzzes with a county evacuation order, mandatory, effective in 12 hours. You pack your car, you load the dog. You pull out of your driveway onto Marigold Avenue. Marigold feeds into Cypress Parkway. Cypress feeds into US 1792. You get to the end of Marigold. You turn onto Cypress. You see 8 miles of brake lights. You check your phone. Google Maps estimates the drive to Orlando at 4 hours. Usually it's 40 minutes. You look at your fuel gauge, half a tank. You look at your dog. You look at the brake lights. You start doing the math. That's the take. Poinciana is the physical manifestation of a brochure that didn't include the exit plan. And now 60,000 people are trapped inside the promise. If Poinciana is trapped by bad design, the next one is trapped by something worse. A single private owner who decides whether you get to leave. Number 5. Cascade, Idaho, the private road trap. Population around 950, growing fast as Idaho real estate speculation has pushed retirees and remote workers into the central mountains. Median home price has risen from around $260,000 in 2019 to around $540,000 today. And sitting on the edge of town is a subdivision called Tamarack Resort, a luxury mountain development where over 80% of the internal road network is privately owned. Some of it by the resort corporation, some of it by individual property owners who retained road ownership rights from the original platting. Here's what nobody tells you about Idaho mountain subdivisions. When you buy a home up a private road, the road maintenance, the plowing, the grading, the culvert repair, the seal coating is either the resort's responsibility, your HOA's responsibility, or nobody's responsibility, depending on which page of the deed you read. In Cascade's case, several homes are accessed only via private roads owned by other individuals, meaning if a neighbor decides not to plow, or decides to install a gate, or decides to charge a toll, your legal remedy is to sue. Sue in Valley County. Wait 18 months. Meanwhile, you can't get your car out for half the winter. In 2021, a resident named Chain, according to court filings, Shay sued a neighboring property owner for blocking road access after a dispute over shared maintenance costs. The case ran for 2 years. It settled for an undisclosed amount. The road access was restored. The legal fees, combined on both sides, were estimated in the local press at over $300,000. For a road. In the mountains, in Idaho. A local posted on a regional forum, "Everyone says Idaho is freedom. Idaho is freedom for the first person who bought land. For everyone who came after, Idaho is whatever the first person decides." Let me rant. The American mythology of the mountain cabin is that you go there to get away from everything. The city, the government, the rules. What the mythology leaves out is that getting away from everything means you also get away from the part where someone is legally required to plow your road. You traded the city, where the city plows for you, for the mountain, where you plow for yourself, unless you can get the neighbor to agree. And the neighbor is a retired surgeon from California who bought in 2019 and doesn't want to split costs because he's only here in August. Picture this. It's February, Cascade, Idaho. You wake up to 41 inches of snow. Your driveway is buried. The private road to your driveway is buried. The county-maintained road a half-mile below is plowed because the county plows its own roads. You call the resort. The resort says that section of road is owned by the adjacent lot owner. You call the adjacent lot owner. It goes to voicemail. You call your lawyer. Your lawyer says, "We filed the easement complaint in October. It's on the docket for April." You hang up. You look at your snow shovel. You start shoveling a half-mile of road by hand. That's the take. Cascade is what happens when you buy the dream of freedom and discover that freedom, in Idaho, is a private asset owned by whoever got there first. If private roads can trap you in the winter, the next one has something worse. A community where the water itself stopped arriving, and the city said, "Not our problem." Number 4. Rio Verde Foothills, Arizona. The day the water stopped. This is the one that made national news in 2023, so you may remember the headline. A suburban community outside Scottsdale, Arizona, where 500 homes suddenly lost their water supply on January 1st of that year. Not because of a pipe break, not because of a drought emergency, but because the adjacent city of Scottsdale officially terminated the water hauling contract that had kept the community alive for decades. And the community, because it was unincorporated, because it had no municipal government of its own, had no legal standing to demand continued service. Population around 2,000. Median home price around $820,000 at the peak, falling fast now. The homes were built on 1-acre plus lots, sold with the understanding that each home would have a private well or would truck in water from Scottsdale. Scottsdale had for years allowed private water hauling companies to fill tanks from city hydrants, which were then delivered to Rio Verde homeowners. Scottsdale, facing its own Colorado River allocation cuts, announced in 2021 that the hauling arrangement would end January 1st, 2023. The Rio Verde residents had 15 months to find a solution. They did not find one in time. On January 1st, the taps went dry. Here's what nobody tells you about Arizona real estate. Arizona has some of the most permissive land use laws in the western United States. You can build a home on a rural lot with no connection to a municipal water system as long as you have a private water source, a well, a hauling arrangement, or a cistern. Buyers do not always understand this. They see a beautiful lot, a desert view, a Scottsdale address, and they assume water works the way water works in Denver or Chicago or Dallas. It does not. Water in Arizona is a negotiated asset. It can be cut off. It has been cut off. And it will be cut off again in other communities, in other years, because the structural problem, too many houses, not enough water, no unified government to manage the conflict, is spreading. A Rio Verde resident told the Washington Post in early 2023, "We bought the house. We didn't realize we didn't buy the water. We thought water came with the house. It doesn't." In this state, you buy water separately. The realtor never said that. The mortgage company never said that. We found out on January 1st. The rant writes itself. America is a country where people drive more miles per year than any other country on Earth. America is also a country where people move to places based on Instagram photos. And Arizona's desert subdivisions are the most photogenic failures of the American real estate imagination. Endless cul-de-sacs under Oka Mountains, swimming pools reflecting the saguaro, and a groundwater table dropping by 3 to 6 feet per year because nobody, collectively, has the authority to stop anyone, individually, from pumping. Picture this, January 1st, 2023. You are in Rio Verde Foothills. You turn on the kitchen faucet. Air comes out. You try the bathroom. Air. You try the outside hose. Air. You check your email. The water hauling company sent a message yesterday confirming that, as of midnight, Scottsdale had ended their access to the hydrants and they are unable to service your account. You stand in your $800,000 kitchen in Scottsdale's metropolitan area in a state with some of the highest paid water lawyers in the country, and you are holding an empty glass. That's the take. Rio Verde is not a cautionary tale about the desert. It is a cautionary tale about what happens when you buy a house and assume the infrastructure comes with it. In America, infrastructure is a separate purchase. Nobody tells you that until the day it stops. If Rio Verde was a single community's water crisis, the next one is a whole city's, and it's been going on so long that most of the country has stopped paying attention. Number 3. Flint, Michigan. Still unresolved in 2026. I debated whether to put Flint on this list because Flint has been on every list for a decade, and you may think you already know the story. You do not know the current version of it. You know the version from 2015 when the water tested positive for lead, when the pleven years after the crisis began. And the children who drank the water in 2014 are now teenagers, and the pediatric neuropsychological data is still being published, and the outcomes are worse than the early reporting suggested. Population around 79,000, down from a peak of nearly 200,000 in 1960. Median home price around 63,000, one of the lowest in urban America, because who, knowing what happened, is bidding up Flint real estate? HOA fees mostly not applicable, because Flint is an actual city with actual neighborhoods, not a master-planned community. Crime rate is elevated. Poverty rate is around 38%. Water service is, on paper, restored. Here's what you probably don't know about Flint in 2026. The original Flint water crisis settlement, $626 million, has been paid out to approximately 79,000 claimants, averaging about $7,900 per person. For lead exposure, for years of poisoned water, for cognitive damage in children, $7,900 per person. Meanwhile, the city of Flint is still under federal consent decree to complete the lead service line replacement program, which was supposed to be finished in 2020, then 2022, then 2024, and is now projected to conclude in 2027. 2027. 13 years after children started showing rashes. A Flint resident told a Bridge, Michigan reporter in 2024, the settlement money paid for a used car. My son can't multiply. He's 13. The money is gone. The brain damage is not. Let me rant. Flint is the single most important American case study in what happens when a community has no governance structure that works. Flint had a city government. Flint had a state government. Flint had a federal EPA. And all three, at different moments between 2013 and 2016, failed to act when they had the legal authority and the scientific evidence to act. What saved Flint, to the extent Flint was saved, was a pediatrician named Mona Hanna-Attisha, who published the blood-lead data and refused to shut up. Not a mayor, not a governor, not a federal agency. A pediatrician. One person. Against a failure of every level of government. That is the real story of Flint. And the real story of Flint is not over, because the lead pipes are not all replaced, and the children are not all healed, and the trust, once a city loses trust in the water coming out of its own tap, the trust does not come back. Not in this generation, maybe not ever. Picture this. It's 2026, Flint, Michigan, a weekday morning. A mother is in her kitchen. She has a filtered pitcher on the counter because she still does not drink the tap water, even though the city says it's safe. even though the testing says it's safe, even though the consent decree says it's on track. She fills the pitcher from a gallon jug of bottled water from Costco. She pours a glass for her son. Her son is 13. He is reading at a 4th grade level. He drinks the water. He goes to school. She washes the glass with tap water because dishes are not drinking. And she thinks, for the 9,000th time, this is my life now. This is what was done to us. Nobody is coming. The story moved on. We didn't. That's the take. Flint is the town where the water crisis never ended, even though the news cycle did, and the settlement money paid for a used car, and the children are still paying the rest of the bill out of their own neurons. If Flint is an ongoing crisis that America forgot, the next one is an ongoing crisis that America never noticed in the first place because it happened to a majority black city in the poorest state in the Union, and the cameras never came. Number 2, Jackson, Mississippi, the capital that couldn't flush. Population around 143,000. Median home price around 98,000. Poverty rate around 26%. And the capital city of the state of Mississippi, which in August 2022 lost its water system entirely for weeks, not in a storm, not in a terrorist attack, but in the slow-motion collapse of infrastructure that had been warned about, in writing, by engineers to city and state officials for over 2 decades. Here's the chronology nobody repeats. In 1998, a federal consent decree was issued to Jackson regarding sewer overflows. The city was ordered to upgrade. The city did not comply. In 2012, a second consent decree was issued. The city still did not comply. In 2020, during a winter freeze, the water treatment plant lost pressure, and residents went without water for weeks. In August 2022, after flooding on the Pearl River, the O.B. Curtis water treatment plant failed. 150,000 people lost access to drinking water. The governor of Mississippi activated the National Guard. Bottled water was trucked in. National cameras arrived briefly, then left. The federal government eventually installed a third-party manager to run the water system, which is still, in 2026, under federal oversight. Here's what you didn't hear on the news. The reason Jackson's water system collapsed is not technical. It is fiscal and political. Jackson is the capital of a state that has for decades moved tax revenue away from its urban core. The population declined from 202,000 in 1980 to 143,000 today, a loss of nearly 30%. As the tax base shrank, the infrastructure, which was built for a larger city, became financially impossible for the smaller city to maintain. The state legislature, dominated by suburban and rural representatives, declined repeatedly to fund comprehensive infrastructure investment in the capital. The result was engineered neglect, not accident, not incompetence. A policy choice made over 4 decades by elected officials who calculated, correctly, that the voters who would suffer were not the voters they needed to win re-election. A Jackson resident told NPR in 2023, "We flush with bottled water sometimes. You know how weird that is? You open a gallon jug of Nestle and you pour it into the toilet tank. Then you flush. Then you do it again the next time. The city says it's fixed. I have 12 jugs under my sink. I'm not convinced. Let me rant. Mississippi is the poorest state in the United States by median household income. Jackson is the largest city in Mississippi. Jackson is majority black. Jackson voted for the opposite party than the state government in every election for the last 30 years. And Jackson's water system collapsed. These facts are not unrelated. If you want to understand American infrastructure, you need to understand that infrastructure decisions are political decisions, and political decisions follow power, and power in America is distributed in ways that leave certain cities with pipes that are 80 years old and budgets that can't afford to replace them. Jackson is not a natural disaster. Jackson is a slow-motion policy crime. Picture this. Summer 2022. Jackson, Mississippi. You walk into your bathroom to brush your teeth. You turn on the faucet. Brown water comes out. Not rust brown, sewage brown. You turn it off. You open the cabinet. You pull out the gallon jug. You pour a capful into a plastic cup. You brush your teeth with bottled water, spitting into the sink, rinsing the sink with more bottled water. You do this twice a day. You have done it for weeks. You will do it for months. You pay the same monthly water bill you paid before the crisis. The bill arrives on time. That's the take. Jackson is what happens when a state decides, slowly and deliberately, that its capital is not worth the investment, and then acts surprised when the plumbing fails. It did not fail, it was allowed to fail. There is a difference. The difference is 40 years of budget votes. If Jackson was failed by the state above it, the last town on this list was failed by the people who owned it. And there are 140,000 of them, and they are suing each other, and the lawyers are the only ones getting rich. Pause. Before we get to number 1, I want you to do one thing. I want you to hit subscribe if you haven't yet. Not because I'm going to make this awkward, because what I'm about to tell you about number 1 is going to change the way you look at every retirement community advertisement you ever see for the rest of your life. And if you leave this video before I get there, you're going to hear about it from a cousin at Thanksgiving, and you're going to wish you'd seen it first. Okay, number 1. Number 1, the Villages, Florida. The happiest place in America is also the most sued. The Villages is the largest age-restricted retirement community in the world. Population around 140,000, bigger than Albany, bigger than Peoria, bigger than most American state capitals. The Villages covers parts of 3 Florida counties. It has its own newspaper, its own television station, its own radio station, its own developer, the Morse family, which has run the place for 3 generations. Median home price around $420,000. Monthly amenity fees run around $200. Property taxes run around $6,000 a year. Community development district assessments run between $1,200 and $4,200 a year. Add it all up, and the cost of being a resident runs, for the average household, somewhere between $1,800 and $2,400 a month, before mortgage, before utilities, before food, before anything. Here's the structure. The Villages is not one community. It is a collection of over 30 community development districts, each with its own bond debt, its own assessments, its own board, and its own ongoing disputes with the developer. The developer controls the amenity contracts, the golf courses, the recreation centers, the pools, through a complex web of ownership entities, some of which are owned by the Morse family, some of which are leased to the residents through the CDDs, and some of which are the subject of active litigation over whether the residents have been systematically overcharged for decades. In 2016, the Internal Revenue Service reached a settlement with certain Villages-related CDDs over whether their bond structures qualified as legitimate governmental debt, a question that, if decided the wrong way, would have exposed bondholders to federal tax liability. The settlement was reached. The bondholders were protected. The residents, who had, through their CDD assessments, been servicing the bonds all along, were not directly affected in the settlement, but the case exposed something that the Villages residents had been quietly discussing for years: that the financial architecture of the community, from the bond structures to the amenity contracts to the ownership of the shared recreational assets, had been designed to maximize revenue to the developer over long horizons and minimize the legal leverage of residents to challenge that revenue in court. Here's what nobody tells you about the Villages. The Villages has 3 separate major class action lawsuits pending as of 2026, involving amenity fee disputes, recreational asset ownership, and deed restriction enforcement. The developer denies wrongdoing. The residents allege systematic overcharging. The judges have, in some cases, declined to certify the classes. In other cases, the classes have been certified and the cases are proceeding. Nothing has been refunded. Nothing will be refunded quickly. The average age of a Villages resident is 71. The average duration of a Florida class action from filing to judgment is 4 to 7 years. Do the math. A Villages resident told a Tampa Bay Times reporter in 2023, "I moved here for the golf. I stayed for the golf. But I spent 3 years of my retirement reading court filings instead of playing it. My wife said she was going to divorce me if I mentioned the amenity fee lawsuit one more time over dinner. I said, I'll divorce the lawsuit. I didn't. The lawsuit is still going. We are still married for now." The comedy is the volume. The Villages is the largest, wealthiest, most politically organized retirement community in the United States. It has more golf carts than some states have cars. It has its own daily newspaper that is, to be polite about it, aligned with the developer's interests. It has recreation centers, polo fields, town squares with live music every night, and a medical complex larger than most county hospitals. It is, and I want to be clear about this, an extraordinary feat of engineering, both physical and social. 140,000 retirees living in organized proximity, doing pickleball and polo and drum circles and sunrise yoga. It is, for many residents, genuinely the happiest place they have ever lived. And simultaneously, it is the site of the most sustained legal conflict between residents and developer in the history of American master-planned communities. Both things are true. That is the paradox. You can be happy and suing at the same time. In the Villages, that is not a contradiction. It is the operating system. Let me rant for one more minute. The Villages is the logical endpoint of every trend in this list. Sun City's HOA control, Lakewood Ranch's CDD debt, Celebration's private equity governance, Ave Maria's weighted voting, Poinciana's trapped exits. Every structural trick we've discussed tonight is present in the Villages, but at a scale and sophistication that the other communities can't match. The Villages is what you get when you take 60 years of American retirement community design, give it unlimited capital, and let it run until you reach a settlement size that a judge can't ignore. It is the final boss of private governance in American real estate. And the punchline is that most of the residents, if you ask them, will tell you they love it. They do. That is not a lie. They also, if pressed, will tell you about the lawsuit. They are not mutually exclusive. They coexist. That is the 2026 American retirement. In love with the place, in court with the landlord. Picture this. A Tuesday evening in Spanish Springs Town Square, the Villages, Florida. The band on the stage is playing Mustang Sally. 300 couples are dancing in the square. Golf carts, customized, chromed, some worth more than my car, are parked in a semicircle around the square. The sun has just set. The temperature is perfect. On a bench near the fountain, a man in a pink polo shirt is scrolling through his phone. He's reading a PDF. It's the latest motion in the amenity fee class action. His wife taps his shoulder and says, "Harold, we're dancing." He puts the phone down. He stands up. He takes her hand. They join the others in the square. The band plays. The lights come up. Above them, the developer's logo glows softly from the top of the clock tower. Everyone is happy. Everyone is also, technically, a plaintiff or a potential plaintiff in one of 3 active lawsuits. The music plays. the retirement continues. That's the take. The Villages is the final proof of this entire video's thesis. You did not buy a house, you bought a product. The product has a subscription. The subscription has terms. The terms are renegotiable by the seller. And by the time you realize this, you are 71, and the golf is good, and the band plays on Tuesdays, and nobody is coming to save you, not because they don't care, but because the structure was designed 40 years ago to ensure that nobody ever could. And that's the list. 10 towns, 1 pattern, different decorations, same operating system. Here's what I want you to take away from this video, and I'm saying this plainly because I think it's important. Everything on this list is legal. Nothing on this list involves fraud in the criminal sense. Nothing on this list is hidden in the sense that the documents are not public. Every HOA, every CDD, every stewardship district, every consent decree, every settlement agreement is, technically, a matter of public record. You can read them. You can request them. You can hire a lawyer to review them before you buy. Almost nobody does. Almost nobody does because the real estate industry is organized to make the dream visible and the contract invisible. The brochure is on the coffee table. The binder is in a drawer, in an office, in a building you will not visit until after you close. And by then, it's too late to unclose. So if you are thinking about buying into one of these communities, any of them, at any price, in any state, I want you to do 3 things. 3 things. Write them down. 1. Ask the realtor, in writing, for the total monthly cost of ownership, not just the mortgage. HOA CDD, amenity, assessment, insurance, taxes, all of it, in writing. If the realtor resists, the realtor is your answer. 2. Ask for the meeting minutes of the HOA board and the CDD board for the last 24 months. Not the financial statements, the minutes. The minutes are where the lawsuits show up. The minutes are where the special assessments show up. The minutes are where you see, in plain English, what the community has actually been arguing about. 3. Ask for the current legal docket, any active, pending, or recently settled litigation involving the community association or the developer. This is public information. Every Florida CDD, every Arizona HOA, every Michigan city, every Idaho subdivision, this is all public. Spend one evening reading it. One evening, before you sign. Those 3 asks will save you, on average, somewhere between $30,000 and $300,000 over the life of your ownership, depending on which community you are considering. The asks are free. The information is free. The only thing you spend is the evening. If you found this useful, subscribe. Next week we are going 1 level up. 10 states where home ownership itself is a trap, where the tax structure, the insurance markets, and the climate exposure have combined to make owning a house a worse financial decision than renting. You will want to see that list before you buy anywhere in 2026. And one final thing. A resident of the Villages wrote to me last month. I won't share her name. She said, "I don't regret moving here. I regret not asking better questions. If you can teach somebody to ask better questions, you've done more for them than any realtor ever will." That's the whole point of this channel, better questions. Before the signature, not after. I'm Report State. Thanks for watching. See you next week.